A phone vibrated softly. A shaky camera lens caught the moment Air India's Boeing 787-9 just lifted off the runway. Seconds later, it dropped like a giant chunk of metal. No explosion. No warning. It simply vanished from the sky. The entire flight lasted less than 40 seconds. And strangely, the cause wasn't the engines. Nor was it a rat sneaking into the cockpit, like the media once speculated. So what really happened? When the investigation team first zoomed in on the final radio signal, the briefing room suddenly went silent. One small detail, missed by everyone, sent the entire investigation in a different direction. And it was never made public. Today, we join Hoover, former F-15E fighter pilot and now aviation crash analyst, as he reveals a detail that's never been mentioned in any news report. A detail that could unlock the entire mystery behind Air India's strangest flight. No official reports, no TV coverage, no newspaper headlines. Only here, on Mind Gap, will you see what the entire aviation industry overlooked. A phone vibrated softly. A shaky camera lens the moment Air India's Boeing 787-9 just lifted off the runway. In that silence, Boeing 787-8. Dreamliner flight AI-171 started up, ready to fly to Europe with nearly 242 people on board. Captain Sumit Sabharwal, 56, was a senior instructor with more than 15,600 flight hours, 8,500 of them on the 787. First Officer Clive Kunder, 32, also had lots of experience. Over 3,400 flight hours, many of them on Dreamliners. According to Reuters, this was a crew that could be called elite in the industry. The plane had passed its technical check just 7 hours before takeoff. All systems were green in the report, with no warning signs. But right after reaching about 650 to 1,000 feet, all lift was suddenly lost. Both engines stopped. The plane couldn't climb and fell fast into a medical school dormitory. Result: 260 people died. Only one person survived by chance. So, with such an experienced crew in modern aircraft, why couldn't Flight 171 pass 1,000 feet? Was it human error, machine failure, or something hidden from the official report? Hoover, former F-15E fighter pilot, now aviation crash expert, will guide you through each detail, from black box data to the clues missed in the investigation. Get ready, because you're not just hearing a normal story, but stepping into a maze of truth never revealed before. Mind Gap will take you to one shocking clue, something left out of the official report. Hit subscribe so you won't miss it. Some news outlets first pointed to a shocking theory. The crew only used half the runway, causing the plane to lack speed and lift. Things got more dramatic when rumors spread that the pilot may have rushed, even been careless in that critical moment. From an outsider's view, it sounded reasonable. Not enough runway, speed too low, not enough lift. A crash was just a matter of time. But when Hoover, former F-15E pilot and now an aviation accident expert, dug into radar and ADS-B data, everything changed. Records showed the plane had back-taxied nearly the full runway length, meaning the crew had pulled the aircraft to the runway's start to use every meter for takeoff. Based on Flight Radar 24 data and early analysis, the Dreamliner had used all 3,500 meters, matching standard heavy aircraft procedures like the 787-9. So despite headlines claiming only half the runway was used, Flight 171 actually used the full length, completely within safety procedures. Not just that, the takeoff run lasted around 62 seconds, matching both black box and radar alert data, showing a by-the-book process with no rush as early reports claimed. If it wasn't due to a short runway, then why did the plane lose thrust just after the wheels left the ground? Why did both engines go silent in less than 1,000 feet of altitude? If this wasn't an error in runway usage, then what really happened? Hoover entered the investigation with raw technical data in hand. He noted that just after liftoff and reaching takeoff speed, the plane showed no signs of banking or yaw, which could confuse a new pilot. It climbed slightly, then suddenly froze, beginning to lose height at a dangerous rate. According to AAIB's early report, the thrust loss came from a fuel cutoff. The fuel switches flipped from run to cutoff on both engines, just 3 seconds apart. This could not happen from simple pilot error, unless some physical or technical force moved the switches. Hoover noted that the fuel switches on the 787-8 are protected by mechanical guards to prevent accidental activation. Meanwhile, the FAA had warned since 2018 that this locking feature might be weak on some Boeing 737s. But evidence showed Air India didn't perform extra checks, since it was only a suggestion, not a mandatory rule. Another odd point Hoover stressed: radar data confirmed the plane reached proper speed, and it looked like the pilot was preparing a turnback if trouble occurred. Yet from a normal state, everything suddenly stopped, like an invisible hand pressed the stop button at the exact moment. If not pilot error, what happened right after the last wheel left the ground? A technical glitch, a maintenance mistake, or a hidden truth buried in the official reports? Do you believe civilian radar, Flight Radar 24, is undeniable proof? Or does it have flaws that trap us into believing what we want to believe? That question isn't just a summary of doubt. It opens a surprising new path for everything that's about to unfold. At this point, the heart of the story flashes red. This is no boring technical case. It's a dramatic event where data was misread and secrets still wait to be uncovered. Comment, agree, if you want to hear more about this mysterious flight. Coming up, MindGap will unlock the next layer: the black box, the final voice from the cockpit, and tiny clues the investigators missed. If it wasn't pilot error, could the radar data be leading us into the wrong maze? MindGap will explore a new layer of mystery with you. Is the data we trust really reliable? Start with radar data from Flight Radar 24, the platform people often use to check flights and plane status. But Hoover stressed that this data is not adjusted for real atmospheric conditions, meaning it shows barometric altitude only, not exact ground level. According to the Flight Radar 24 blog, altitude data reported via ADS-B is based on uncalibrated barometric pressure. Do not account for local air temperature. Some uncertainty still exists. That means the 625 feet you see might be just a phantom number. Looking at the radar tab, Flight 171 seems to climb and then drop quickly. But in real video from security cameras and a bystander clip, the plane was still climbing, nose gear pulled in, with no sudden fall. ABC News even described the Boeing flying unusually slow, then crashing just seconds later. If radar data isn't fully accurate, are we misreading the moment of failure? Hoover extended the analysis to the bystander video, frame by frame. There was no sign of the plane rolling hard or catching fire before falling. Instead, the plane kept its nose raised, then lost altitude and lift control. This goes against theories of engine explosion or pilot error. Many people trust radar plane data, even though Flight Radar 24 warns, computed altitude AGL values should only be used for information purposes. This means all radar-based analysis can be very wrong if we don't assess the data's source correctly. Also, on r/aviation and many forums, experts noted that ADS-B can show errors due to weak signal at takeoff or how its algorithm arranges data. This could make charts look like the plane climbed then dipped, while in fact, manual control was still working fine. If radar data isn't fully accurate, then our theories of engine failure or pilot mistake built on shaky ground. And if everyone is forming opinions based on an image, that isn't correct. Is the whole investigation, press and public going the wrong way? Why did the plane lose thrust after its last wheel left the ground? If it wasn't because the pilot used half the runway, and if data is unclear, then what really made the plane keep climbing speed, then suddenly lose lift? Do you think civilian radar is a source we can fully trust, or just a version of truth we were meant to see? Before moving on to the black box analysis, viewers are stuck on the key question. Are we decoding this mystery using real data or fake data? Next, MindGap promises to uncover the black box, the device that holds final voices and sounds from the cockpit. But first, imagine looking at a picture, painted in the wrong colors. Once you know the true colors, can you finally see the truth? Now, MindGap takes you to the heart of the mystery, where there are no more guesses, no blurry radar images, only the voice of a human being.
Thrust not achieved. Falling. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
Just 7 words, but they hold the entire essence of the disaster. Not a technical command, not a string of data code. It was the final call from the cockpit of Flight 171 recorded just seconds before the Boeing slammed into the ground at over 250 kilometers per hour. And this time, no machine could hide the truth anymore. Hoover, who served over 10 years in the U.S. Air Force as an F-15E pilot, and now works as an aviation incident analyst for a major airline, insisted the words "thrust not achieved" were not vague. They are a life-or-death signal in aviation. It doesn't just mean reduced thrust, it means the aircraft can no longer stay airborne. Lift can no longer be sustained, and the plane begins to fall, literally. Not because the air is too thin, not because of a bad wind direction, but because there is nothing left pushing the plane forward. According to the preliminary report released by the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau of India, AAIB, on July 16, 2025, just a few seconds after takeoff, both fuel switches were flipped from run to cutoff. This action is the same as cutting all fuel supply to both engines. A Dreamliner, one of the most modern aircraft in Air India's fleet, was now flying on inertia. And the strange thing is, no engine failure warning had been detected. No engine fail message. No recorded malfunction before the loss of thrust. Only 2 switch flips, and that was it. In aviation, this is considered an impossible scenario. One engine cutting off, that's possible. But both shutting down within less than 2 seconds? On a plane that had just passed a technical inspection 7 hours before takeoff, with a flight crew ranked as top tier by the airline? Hoover sat in front of the black box playback screen and shook his head. He didn't believe it was a random mechanical fault. To him, it was an accident born out of chaos. Hoover suggested a chilling theory. Perhaps one of the engines had auto shutdown due to a sensor fault or system glitch. And in the emergency, with alarms blaring in the cockpit, the pilot accidentally shut off the remaining engine. It's like driving 150 kilometers per hour on the freeway. Suddenly one tire blows. You react by instinct, but you yank the wheel in the wrong direction. That one move, and everything starts to fall apart. In the cockpit of Flight 171 at 4:22 a.m., the air was thick with warning sounds, flashing red lights, and growing vibration from the fuselage. The pilots had less than 15 seconds to save a 200-ton 787 from falling. And in that kind of environment, even the most seasoned pilot can make a mistake. According to data from the CVR, quoted by Reuters on July 17th, there was a short but disturbing exchange between the pilots. "Why did you shut it off?" "I didn't." Just 2 lines, but they carry tremendous weight. They show that even inside the cockpit there was confusion. Or worse, no one was fully aware of what was happening. Hoover said, "When the people flying the plane don't know who did what, the plane has already gone beyond the point of recovery." FDR data shows the first switch was flipped when the plane reached 180 knots, approximately 333 kilometers per hour. Just 1 second later, the second switch was also moved to cut off. 4 to 5 seconds later, both engines lost power, too little thrust to hold altitude. About 9 seconds later, the 787 began to drop below the standard climb path and never regained it. An attempt to restart the engines was detected, but it was too late. The aircraft lost speed, lost lift, and began to drift off its stable path. Hoover described it. From that moment on, they were no longer Air India pilots. They were just two men inside a wounded machine, trying to hold on to whatever control they had left. No one could have done more, with only 15 to 20 seconds before impact. In emergency simulations, pilots are trained to handle a single engine loss or a sudden drop in fuel pressure. But there's no training scenario where a pilot accidentally shuts off both engines in just 2 seconds, then has to regain control of a 200-ton aircraft flying at just 600 to 900 feet. And there's no course that teaches you how to handle the moment you realize you were the one who said, "Thrust not achieved." This was no longer just a mechanical problem. This was a psychological disaster in the cockpit. A chain of human reactions. Pushed to the edge. Inside a sealed space with time ticking down in heartbeats. Hoover plays the audio again. And then, silence. A heavy silence. Not from the sky, but from the entire system. From the instruments, from the crew, from the ground control. Everything stopped. If you were in that cockpit, when the plane shook, warning lights flashed, and the engines choked, would you stay calm enough not to flip the wrong switch? Or would you do what any human might do when death is near? Follow instinct and hope it's right? We once doubted the radar data. We argued over the blurry video clips. But that voice from the CVR recording, is undeniable. It is the final truth before everything vanished. And Hoover ends the chapter with a simple statement. That sound said it all. But what about what wasn't said? Get ready, because the next chapter dives into something that seemed harmless. A flap left extended, a landing gear not retracted, and one tiny detail under the belly of the plane. That could be the earliest warning sign of a dying system. After the desperate Mayday call, a final cry cutting through the dark sky, a sound that can no longer be guessed, we thought we had uncovered the full tragedy of Flight 171. But Hoover didn't stop there. Because there was one small detail, one blurry frame lasting less than 2 seconds in a security camera at Ahmedabad airport, that might be the fatal clue that brought the entire aircraft down. The camera recorded the Boeing 787-8 just lifting off the runway. But what stunned aviation engineers wasn't the plane's speed or its angle, but that the landing gear wasn't retracted and the flap stayed at the 5 degrees takeoff setting instead of being adjusted for climb. In aviation, this is a state no one wants to see once a plane is airborne. Gear left down too long creates heavy drag and slows climb rate. Flaps not retracted mean unstable airflow as the aircraft accelerates. When both happen at once, lift is limited and drag rises sharply. At the same time, engines were already losing thrust, as shown in the last chapter, meaning the plane had almost no chance if not fixed within 20 seconds. People quickly asked, could the pilot have pulled the flap lever instead of the gear lever? Several Reddit posts floated a theory that the co-pilot might have confused the two levers since they are placed close together in the 787 cockpit. But Hoover dismissed this theory right away. "That can't happen," he said firmly. The captain was an instructor with tens of thousands of hours, and both had just passed their recertification 3 weeks earlier. No veteran pilot would mix up flap with landing gear, unless they were facing something worse than cabin pressure, a time crisis. Hoover offered a scarier scenario. The crew didn't get it wrong. They ran out of time to do it right. Right after noticing thrust loss, they switched to emergency mode. All checks on levers, flap screens, altitude indicators had to be rushed within 10 to 15 seconds. And in that moment, holding the nose steady was priority one. No flap change? Maybe. Gear still down? Maybe. As long as it bought a few more seconds to try restarting the fuel system, the one that was cut off by both switches being flipped from run, as noted in the previous chapter. Then Hoover turned the audience's focus to the most controversial detail: the RAT, ram air turbine. In one frame under the plane's belly, a small gray spot appears that some say was the deployed RAT. According to experts like Captain Steve Schreiber and engineer Vishal Rao, who worked on Dreamliner incidents in Singapore, the RAT only deploys when all main electrical and hydraulic systems are lost, and the plane enters a dead ship state, a craft with no technical life left. If the RAT really came out, that would prove the plane lost not only thrust, but all electronic flight control as well. In other words, the cockpit became a sealed box, holding two men flying a falling machine by muscle and instinct. But Hoover wasn't easily convinced. He analyzed the clip frame by frame. The angle was too far. The image blurred by infrared noise. The rumble claimed to be the RAT spinning could have just been engine fade or wind hitting the unretracted flap. Was that really the RAT, or just the illusion of a system breaking apart? Hoover asked. If it wasn't the real RAT, then the total power loss theory collapses. And the crisis wasn't caused by machines, but by a chain of rushed moves, mistakes, and too little time. Hoover summed it up. If we look at the flap, it didn't rotate wrong. If we look at the gear, it stayed down, but not because of error, maybe because it wasn't time yet. If we listen to the RAT sound, it may not have been the RAT. And if we replay all 40 seconds, we see a system meant to be modern, optimized, automatic, but it failed because there wasn't enough time for humans to keep up. A few wrong lever moves, a few seconds of panic, and every safety layer was breached. A system designed to handle dozens of small failures, yet it collapsed when all those tiny holes lined up. Mind Gap will reveal the truth after digging into cockpit secrets, even when both the preliminary report and the media stayed silent. Because some things only appear when you dare to look closer. Air India. Flight 171 may not have faced one big mistake. No engine explosion, no total electrical collapse, not even a crazy decision from the cockpit. But like many air disasters in history, tragedy can happen when all the small holes in each safety layer accidentally line up. A flap not in the best position. A fuel switch flipped in panic or confusion. A mayday cut off halfway. An electrical system that may not have failed but simply paused. And after it all, a heavy silence in the official reports. Hoover doesn't believe in blaming people based on guesses. He also won't accept how fast the media rushed to accuse humans, when the system itself could be the silent killer. What we need now isn't a quick conclusion, but the patience to wait for full data from the black boxes, both CVR, cockpit voice recorder, and FDR, flight data recorder. Because only when every last second is decoded and every lever re-examined in real context will we know what really happened inside Flight 171's cockpit that morning. Mind Gap will return as soon as the black boxes are released, with a breakdown of every minute, every alert, every twist of fate. And maybe, inside that cold data, we'll hear something no one dared to speak. But for now, what do you think really happened inside Air India Flight 171's cockpit? Was it a chain of technical failures, a moment of human error, or a crash like none ever recorded? Leave a comment below to join the debate. And don't forget to like and subscribe to MindGap, because in the next episode, we'll decode the final seconds of the flight that never reached its destination. Because sometimes, the truth is not in the noisiest place, but buried under layers of seemingly meaningless details, waiting for someone patient enough to look back from the beginning. And who knows, you, the person watching this video, will be the first to realize what all the reports have missed.